everybody for coming here tonight. I come here because I was invited by a parent of one of the students here. My name is Alexa Wolf, and I am a graduate student at Bloomsburg University in the Department of Education. I am also a transgender woman. I wanted to first of all thank the district for being one of the few districts in the state to have modeled this transgender policy to provide the safety for our students. But I also come here because I am concerned as both an educator and a trans woman. You see, when you're there's a lot that needs to be known about what being trans really is. It's not something that just happens overnight. It's something that over a long period of time it's a discovery within yourself. And when I first came out as transgender 3 years ago, I finally found myself to be useful in this world. Sorry. But anyway, I didn't prepare a speech tonight. But so, my biggest concern tonight is that there are a lot of concerned parents out there who somehow believe in this myth that transgender people are somehow sexual deviants because of the restroom or locker room or gender segregated facility that we use. But I want everybody to just simply ask themselves, what evidence is there towards that notion? When was the last time that we heard a news story about a transgender person attacking somebody in the bathroom for whatever reason? I don't remember that at all. But on the other side of things, there are statistics that show that it's simply the other way around, is that transgender people are more likely to be either attacked or verbally assaulted in the restroom. A study done by the Williams Institute in 2013 determined that out of 93 participants in the Washington, D.C. area, 70% experienced some type of verbal harassment, denial of access, or physical assault. 18% were denied access to the bathroom, while 25% were African American. 68% have experienced verbal harassment. 83% were people of color. 9% were physically assaulted. 42% of that sample were K through 12 students. 10% felt that harassment was endangering their education, and that's my biggest concern, because this transgender policy is ensuring that these students have their rights to a safe education. I experienced this at Bloomsburg, and ever since I first started graduate school over a year ago, I have felt that nothing but warmth, love, and acceptance from the university. I've never had an instance where I felt that my life was threatened, or I don't believe that anybody believed that their life was threatened because I used the women's room. So what I wanted to ask the school board is that although there is a lot of debate over whether or not to keep this policy, if there is actual truth to this policy ensuring that transgender students have the right to a safe education, why revoke that? Why take away a student's right to an education? and I'll say it again, it paints me as both an educator and a trans person. Standing up here in front of a school district that I was not part of while in my K through 12 years, my first time as speaking as an educator in front of a school board, this is new life for everybody, and I truly believe that we all need to just take a step back and be able to just we should learn about transgender people. We should be, you know, we learn about new people all the time, and everybody deserves that chance to be accepted. Thank you.
Selinsgrove Area School District implemented a new practice, a practice in which basic human rights were granted to the transgender students attending the school. Transgender students who have notified the school of their gender identity have access to proper facilities to match their gender identities. I will affirm my position backing the school on their fair and just practice, allowing for the safety, privacy, and well-being and respect of every student in the district. Under Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. In order for our district to comply with Title IX, the district must treat transgender students of a particular gender identity in the same manner in which they treat other students of the same gender identity. Under Title IX, there is no medical diagnosis or treatment requirement that students must meet as a prerequisite to being treated consistent with their gender identity. Also under Title IX, requiring students to produce identification documents in order to treat them consistent with their gender identity is in direct violation of the regulation. If our school district chooses to nullify their policy, they are violating Title IX, a regulation put into place to assure a non-sex discriminatory environment. The district also has a policy on sexual harassment, policy number 248. This policy clearly prohibits all forms of sexual harassment in the school environment. Under Title IX, the right to privacy of all transgender students is protected. Even when a student has disclosed the student's transgender status to some members of the school community, schools may not rely on the FERPA exception to disclose personally identifiable information from education records to other school personnel who do not have legitimate educational interest in the information. If transgender students were required to go to facilities that do not match their gender identities, this would disclose the student's transgender status to members of the school community who they did not give their consent to be disclosed to. Schools are prohibited from disclosing a student's sex. This includes transgender status, as disclosing this information has the potential to cause harm, sexual harassment, or an invasion of privacy to the student. Not only does refusing to allow transgender students into facilities that match their gender identity take away their right to privacy, it makes their daily lives at school much more dangerous. 50% of transgender students have thought seriously about committing suicide, while 25% of transgender students have attempted to do so. When transgender individuals are forced into using single-stall restrooms, they are being put under a separate but equal fallacy. This philosophy is similar to that of the Jim Crow laws in which a minority of people are separated from the majority of people due to factors they were born with. This philosophy has been already deemed by many to be discriminatory and bigoted. Reports of transgender men being forced to use the women's restroom have resulted in violence and assault of the transgender men. This means that restroom usage based on biological sex will result in violence to transgender individuals. The main argument of individuals against the new policy the school has created can be proven wrong. Certain individuals have created a false sense of paranoia and fear with the notion that sex predators can use the policy to dress up as women and enter the women's restroom and sexually harass women. However, this cannot be proven true, as there are no reports of sexual assault increasing alongside increased usage of bathrooms that coincide with a transgender person's gender identity. There have also been no statistics proving that transgender women using the women's restroom have sexually harassed any cisgender women. I will finally affirm my position in support of keeping the district's practice in place. The practice put into place is in support of civil rights. The practice put into place by Selinsgrove Area School District proves that this district holds the privacy, safety, and well-being of all students in the district to their highest regard. This district has made many great strides in assuring the rights of its students. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for this opportunity this evening. We are parents of a transgender child in this school district. I want to thank the school district publicly for their courageous decision to support students in the school district who are transgender. It was not an easy decision. This practice that Selinsgrove has now implemented and was described in the letter you all received is used by hundreds and hundreds of school districts across the country without incident, without difficulty. Okay? This is something that exists in lots of places like our community. All of you, adults and children in this room, already share bathrooms with transgendered people regularly. You do it when you go to the mall. You do it when you go to restaurants. You do it when you go to the movie theater. You do it when you go to a sporting event. It happens all the time without incident and without difficulty. I will tell you that transgendered people, as I've learned a lot over the past couple of years, don't find restrooms very fun places to be. They want to use them as discreetly and quickly as all of you do, as all of us do. And in fact, forcing transgendered people and transgendered students in the district into a bathroom where they don't belong will cause much more harm and much more difficulty. What this practice means in Selinsgrove is that transgender students can safely go to school, safely use the facilities, just like they do everywhere else in the world that they go. I and my family are proud of this district. We're proud of the students who've acted and spoken up. Those students are our future, and I'm very proud that the district has chosen to support them. Thank you.
I would just like to start out by saying thank you to all of you that are up there on stage, and to the students who spoke earlier about violent crimes increasing. I have been in this school district for 20-some years, and I have never seen a violent crime against a person who has decided to choose the opposite sex. And also to the student who spoke from Greensburg, he had mentioned that they are physically insulted 80% of the time. I have a daughter who was in 6th grade who does not identify as the opposite sex, who I could have said was insulted 80% of the time while she was at school. So I don't want you to use that as an excuse, because there are people that are biologically the same sex, and they are also physically insulted. You are not the only people. God has created us. And to the school board members who will make this decision, first of all, I think this policy was enacted without the school board approval. The policy was enacted without the school board approval, as I think that I'm aware. And I looked up some of the information on the internet about how you guys practice and rules and policies that you follow. And there's a section that says Standards for Effective School Governance. And under Models of Responsible Governance and Leadership by, it says that you interact with other school officials in other districts and using resources provided by organizations and agencies committed to effective governance and management of public schools. As far as I know, there's only one other school district in this area that has actually implemented this policy. Therefore, have you looked to other school districts as your standards say? And a couple other things in that standard that I found that were very interesting, based on a school board meeting that we were at a month ago. It says that personal decisions should be based upon all sufficient facts. We should vote our honest conviction without partisan bias. and we will abide by and uphold the majority decision of the board. I know that some of you said we are on your side, but there are other governances above us. And this says that you will vote according to your honest conviction without partisan bias. And when you vote upon this measure, I just pray that you would take that into consideration. And it also says under the same section of the Code of Conduct, in order to maintain a free and strong country, our civic obligation to the community, commonwealth, and nation is to maintain free and strong public schools in the United States of America without surrendering our responsibilities to another person, group, or organization. You guys are supposed to vote on your convictions, not on Title IX funding or litigation. It says it right here in your Code of Conduct. And I just want to say to everybody that is here tonight, you have been fearfully and wonderfully made in the eyes of God. And please remember that when you go to bed tonight.
My name's Ruben Council. My family moved here back in 2004. My daughter started kindergarten in the school system, and she'll be graduating this year. She's a senior. And I have to say that anyone that knows me will know that I've been quick to be critical when I haven't agreed with things that the school system has done. But I have to say also that when I received the letter from Chad Kors back in October, it was one of the moments that I was probably the most proud of this school system. I read it, my wife read it, my daughter read it, and we were all just really, really happy that the school system was doing what was right for these students. I am not transgender. I am not gender questioning. I don't even conceive to understand what these human beings go through on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's where we need to keep our thoughts as we think through this issue. At its core, this is a human rights and civil liberties issue. This is a free country. People are allowed to do what they do. We've come a long way over the years, and this is really quite simply an evolution of society once again. We're living in a place where it used to be legal to own slaves. We live in a place where it used to be legal for women not to vote. Homosexuality has taken on a very different connotation over the last 15 to 20 years in this country. And this is quite simply the next evolution of society. Whether it be now or whether it be 20 years from now, it's simply a shift that we all need to come to be comfortable with. So, quite simply, and to close things out, this is the land of the free, this is the home of the brave. Why would we want to stand on someone's civil liberties? I think the policy as it stands is an elegant and simple solution to the issue of transgender and gender questioning students.
Hi, I'm a retired employee of the Selinsgrove School District. I work over 10 years in the health rooms of the elementary schools. And I just wanted to address a couple of issues. One of the things that is mentioned is that they're concerned for the safety of people who feel they're transgender. And I know that many times we use their nurses' health room in the bathroom in there to give people a chance to feel safe and to be able to use a bathroom that they would feel comfortable in. So I believe that the former policy that you had before Superintendent Kors changed this, afforded you, or those of you, I don't know, who are transgender, to be in a safe and comfortable place. I know myself, I often prefer to be in a bathroom by myself, at least when I'm undressing or whatever else, but it offers you a safe place. But I also want to ask about the comfort. It seems like the change has been that you are putting the comfort of a few over the comfort of a large amount of other kids. I believe that comfort and safety can be two different things. And I believe that you can be comfortable if you are given also a bathroom where you know that you can go any place or any time, so that someone mentioned here, when you go into the bathroom in a public place and you are transgender, you do not always feel comfortable or safe. You want to get out as quickly as possible. So I believe what you did before this new policy was enacted, or whatever it is, that transgender people were allowed a safe and a comfortable place. And in changing that, you have given the majority, a place that is no longer considered comfortable. Again, I'm not saying that because you're transgender that you offer a risk, but there is definitely a lack of a comfort, and I think that that's something that you really need to look at.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Josh Bodine. I'm from the Bodine Law Firm from Lysiak, Pennsylvania. Just about 2 dark and rainy hours away from here. But I'm very much glad to be here. There's nowhere else I'd rather be tonight. I am an allied attorney with the Alliance Defending Freedom and Pennsylvania Family Institute. An Independence Law Center asked me to be here, as did some parents who are very concerned about what these considerations mean for their sons and daughters. I have 4 school-age children, obviously not in this school district, but these are issues that are very close to my heart and that I've familiarized myself with, and I'd like to just clarify some things. So, we have to know what the law says, and I want to be very clear about one thing. What President Obama says does not make it law. We live in I appreciate it, but I want to make sure I hit all my points. We live in a country where Congress passes the laws, where the board makes the decisions for its school students. When the president issues a decree, an executive action, that often is able to be done in a situation where Congress has been silent, or the superintendent, as you know, can make certain decisions in areas where your policies are silent. But in areas like this, where Congress passed what we discussed here as Title IX 40 years ago, and court after court after court have upheld it, we'll get into that specifically with the definition of sex as the sex with which you were born at your birth, your biological sex. That is the well-established law. President Obama, through the Department of Education, through the Department of Justice, having issued a letter that is simply his opinion and a statement of intention to proceed in that direction. Now, there's not just what the law says, but there's the practicalities of the matter. This letter was issued by a lame duck president who is going to be headed out in about 2 months. Our president-elect, I don't know his position on this issue, but there is at least a chance that he's going to reverse course. So let's get into this, and I don't want to seem crass in any way. The issues on both sides are very legitimate. Those students who identify as transgender, these are very legitimate and sincere issues, and I'm not for the moment trying to minimize that. I just want to make sure that's clear. Let's also be clear about what the law says. So, Title IX, as I'm sure by now you're all familiar, indicates that no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal assistance. And as you probably also know, the point of this was to make sure, for example, that women were getting equal access in sports, that all the funding wasn't going to men's sports and not women's sports. And so that is the point of the law. And it has worked very well over these 40 years. It has been interpreted over and over again to indicate that the word sex in what I've read in Title IX is not based on what one determines their own sex to be, not as they self-identify. One example, Texas versus the United States, always a good pinning. Basically, this is the case from August of earlier this year, and I believe the superintendent actually referred to this. And the court held, it cannot be disputed that the plain meaning of the term sex, as used in Title IX's regulations, when it was enacted by the Department of Education, following passage of Title IX, meant the biological and anatomical differences between male and female students as determined at their birth. That is a federal case interpreting congressional law. What we just saw up here is a letter from one man. Happens to be the president, but he's going beyond the scope of his authority. The Department of Education and the Department of Justice under him are essentially doing what he's asked them to do. But this is not law. There is specific other case law indicating that in a situation like this, what this kind of memorandum is not law, does not have the force of law. This dear colleague letter, although it sounds very cordial, very friendly, dear colleague, really it's nothing less than bullying. It's nothing less than intimidation. Saying, hey, if you don't toe the line, we're going to take your funding. Let me try to clarify you for something very important. No school anywhere in the United States has lost their funding because of this issue. I want that to sink in. No school has lost their funding, Title IX, because of this issue. In order for you to lose your funding through the Department of Education, the Department of Education would have to say, you have to do X. And then you say, no, we're not going to do X. They say you're in violation. You get to appeal that. You get to appeal that. You get to do what's called exhausting your appeals all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. Even at that point, if the United States Supreme Court then says, hey, you were wrong, you were supposed to do what the DOE said you were supposed to do, you still get 30 days to say, okay, we were wrong, we're going to change our policy. There is no physical, practical way that entire process could happen between now and June of 2017, which, as the superintendent correctly indicated, is when the U.S. Supreme Court is going to render its decision in the Gloucester case, which is really this exact situation. So if you're thinking of it from a risk perspective, let's kind of think of it as you have door A and door B. If you want to, on the one hand, fulfill the black letter interpretation, not the interpretation, but the black letter law of Title IX, and the 40 years of interpretation consistent with what I've just mentioned through the federal courts, and leave things the way they are, with male students using male facilities, female students using female facilities, and students who identify as the opposite sex being given a reasonable accommodation in a separate facility. If you want to do that, let's talk about what the risks are. Let's say we're now June of next year. The Supreme Court says, you know what, you were wrong. We're going to follow former President Obama's reasoning in this matter. Well, you're going to get plenty of opportunity to then change your policy for 2017-2018 year. No risk on that side. If, however, you decide to stick your neck out and be the vanguard and say, we're actually going to rush ahead of the United States Supreme Court, we're going to take the lead in this, we're going to go in unexplored territory, we're going to be a test case, if you will. No one wants to be a test case. If you say we're going to do that instead and give the stamp of approval to what the superintendent has already indicated he's done, behind your back and without your approval, then what you risk is the United States Supreme Court saying, no, that is not right. That is not consistent with the 40 years of consistent, countrywide interpretation, including, by the way, the Ninth Circuit, where California is. And the risk is that then you've got essentially, this is a legal phrase, egg on your face. Not only that, you open yourself to litigation from every single parent of every single child who you have forced to be in a compromising position in bathrooms and showers and locker rooms against their will, without their permission, with members of the opposite sex. Let me point out also that you actually have a policy already on the books that you're in violation of, potentially, or that runs exactly counter to what the superintendent has been doing, and that's this. I haven't had a chance to read all your policies, but as you know, in a criminal situation where maybe a student is suspected to have contraband on his or her person, there's reasonable suspicion, and there's a specific procedure for searching that student, as is appropriate. That procedure indicates, and I'll find the number here for you in a moment, that procedure indicates in at least 3 places that that person is to be searched by a member of the same sex. Here we are. Searches involving removal of clothing or examination beneath clothing. Quote, searches involving the removal of or examination beneath any clothing of a student, etc., shall be conducted only by a staff person of the same gender as the student, with at least one other staff person of the same gender present as a witness, and in a location assuring privacy from observations by persons not involved in the search or of the opposite sex. 3 times in the same policy, you guys or your forebears made clear that consistency of sex in this most private and most intimate of situations is very important. If you want to allow the superintendent to continue doing what he has indicated, you need to basically say we were wrong in this policy, and you need to change that. If, however, you want to honor what you and your colleagues prior have been doing, and be safe and be consistent with what the United States Supreme Court has said, with what Congress has said, then you leave the way things are. You say, no, superintendent, this is going to have to wait till next year. We're not going to allow this. Let me make the point another way.
One more minute.
Yes. One more minute. Okay, thank you. I will also, let me just mention that there is case law as well. I don't want to take time finding the citation, but there's also case law that indicates that prisoners have the right not to be forced in situations where they are viewed in a compromising way, semi-clothed or unclothed, by prison guards of the opposite sex. Now, if prisoners have that right, shouldn't our children have that right? I don't think you want to see. I don't think you want to see the newspaper line. Sillins Grove area school district thinks prisoners have more rights than children. Now, I'm not trying to be coy about that, but I mean, if the thought is fear, if the thought is risk of litigation, the safer route, the more well-trodden route, the more established route based on law, based on precedent, is to leave the policy as it is, to not allow the superintendent to do as he's done this year, to say, no, we're going to reverse that, and leave the traditional policy in place, and say, look, we're going to let the U.S. Supreme Court decide this, and in June of next year, we will follow their lead. Thank you very much.
I'm Lysiak. Stay tuned for the latest developments.